Hi there, my name is Frank Dillman, and I've been a student of Initiative and Referendum in Alabama for nearly a decade. In my honest opinion, this is the only means of Initiative and Referendum is the only means of opening our state government to the people where it really belongs. I&R is nothing new. There's evidence in ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and it's been Switzerland is the first country in the world to have the citizens with this measure. And South Dakota is the first state in the nation where the citizens had an initiative referendum, and that came about in 1898. We all know that we have the right to petition our governments. It is our right, it's not a privilege, to petition our governments. Unfortunately, we have too many lobby groups that have untethered access to our legislators, and we sometimes fall behind the back window. This is our means of having a collective voice of the citizens, where we currently do not have this. And like I said, it's our right. It's not a privilege. So you ask, what is initiative referendum? Initiative part of the equation is where you, as a citizen, would have the right to place a statute and/or a constitutional amendment on the ballot. Think about that for a second. You would have the right to place a statute and a constitutional amendment on a ballot. The referendum part of the equation is what I like. The referendum would provide the citizens of this state the right to ratify or reject statutes. So if there's a statute that's passed by our legislators, this is the means of revoking it or repealing it. You may remember in 2007 that 62% pay raise that our legislators voted themselves, not once but twice. First time was on a voice vote, the second time after it was vetoed by the governor. Then they went with a recorded vote and they still voted themselves that 62% pay raise. 2007, just before the bubble burst. I have no doubt in my mind, if we had an initiative referendum at the time, it would have been recalled, as it should have been. And also keep in mind, no two states in the nation or the municipalities and counties, this goes all the way down into the individual municipalities in some states, they're nothing the same. Everybody is slightly different. It may be the amount of signatures, it may be where they can or cannot collect the petitions, it might also be the length of time. So everything is a little bit different. So you really can't compare apples and oranges in this picture. But let's take a look at initiative. Initiative comes in primarily two parts, or two examples. You have your direct, and the direct is directly from the citizens to the ballot. Sure, you have to have your petitions verified by the Secretary of State, but the legislative branch isn't included. Indirect, the legislative branch is included. However, the way the bill has been written for the last 15 some odd years here in the legislature, the bill cannot be modified or changed without the registered agent being involved. So there's some safety measure in there. We may have to go through the legislature, but that's not really a bad thing in reality. Referendum, there's three primary examples of referendum. You have your popular referendum, obviously from the people. The legislative referendum is from the legislature, and we see legislative referendum on our ballots very, very frequently. Nearly every election, and we see something that the legislature wants us to vote on, not what we may want to vote on. And the final one is the advisory referendum. That's where the governor or the legislative branch wants to take a pulse on the people's feelings about a particular issue. In 1999 to 2000, there was 10,000 new laws that were passed in the United States. There was only 32 initiatives. So people will tell you that it'll crowd our government and take over the government. It will not, by any stretch of imagination. 49 states have a legislative referendum. Delaware is the only state that does not. And the popular referendum, as I mentioned before, that was in 2007, a 62% pay raise, that they took their salary from $28,000 to $54,000 in a matter of 5 years. So we take a look at the haves and have-nots with the initiative referendum. The haves are primarily in the West Coast. The Midwest is a mixture, and the East Coast is primarily the other state. They're the have-nots, if you may. Well, as the West Coast was being settled, the Midwest and the West was being settled by the settlers from the East Coast, they were incorporating safety nets, changes to the government that they were leaving behind on the East Coast. So if you take a look at LetBamavote website, you'll see a map of the United States. Primarily the East Coast is blue, Midwest is combination, and the West Coast is red. So the settlers wanted to leave behind the cronyism, the inability to contact the legislators, and all the other measures. They want to be more engaged in their government that they were being denied. And they were incorporating this into their government out west. And also, too, 26 states have this right. Over 70% of the population in the United States have a semblance of this right. Where New York City has this. Atlanta and 3 municipalities in Georgia have it. All the major municipalities in Texas have it, but the states do not. So that would amount to the additional percentage that we would have in the United States. Like I said, over 70%. Some of the samplings, I'll just give you one, well, maybe two examples. In Wyoming, it took them 50 years before they can get their first initiative on the ballot because their signature threshold is so high. It's 15% of the voters in the last gubernatorial race. That's the highest in the nation. However, things can be done when the people really want to. In 1968, there were 3 measures that were placed on the ballot. One dealing with term limits of the legislators. Another one dealt with the elimination of tractor-trailer trucks on state highways, pulling 3 trailers. And the third one dealt with enhanced safety measures, hazardous waste safety measures along the rail corridors. All 3 of them passed. Now we could guess that why the legislators didn't handle the first one, term limits, but the second 2, if any of you have been out west, you'll know that the rail and the trucking industry is very, very powerful out west. So it would be interesting to know if those legislators actually voted for this because themselves and family members and friends would drive those same state corridors that we were talking about. So in a nutshell, the citizens can do the work, and we're willing to do the work when our legislators choose not to do it for any reason at all. We can do it. We're oftentimes called citizen legislators. In Mississippi in 1992, they had a measure on the ballot, again, grassroots measure, popular referendum, where they wanted to prevent another Kilo, Connecticut. In a nutshell, Kilo, the New London, Connecticut, gave, or wanted to give, 90 acres of a residential and small business property to a business enterprise. They were flipping it. They were flipping it for the. That's a cat. They were flipping it to turn it over to an economic development. This woman, Kilo, who was a registered nurse, took it all the way to the federal Supreme Court, and the federal Supreme Court ruled against the Fifth Amendment, and she was told that she had to leave that land. However, now, the last time I looked, a couple months ago, on Google Maps, that 90 acres still is a vacant lot. So what Mississippi voters wanted to do, they wanted to ensure that this was not going to happen. They put it on the ballot, and it was passed by 73%. And what that does now, any municipality or a governmental enterprise in Mississippi must hold on to the property that they have taken through eminent domain for at least 10 years before they can flip it. Now, if they use it for governmental use, that's a different story. The latest bill that we've had in the State House was House Bill 235 by Isaac Wharton. And I'll read from my notes here to make it a little bit quicker. The signature requirement for the constitutional amendment on the ballot is 10% of the voters in the last gubernatorial race. For statutes, it's 7%. There's a $1,000 filing fee. Some states vary across the board. Massachusetts is $0. And the nearest state, or the highest state right now, is $500. So theoretically, we would double that if the present bill became law. One of the things, too, that we were able to change, substantially similar in the petition verification process. If I sign the voter rolls as Frank Dillman, and I signed a petition as Franklin R. Dillman, and all the other data is the same, my petition would be validated, where in the past it may not have been. We also took a look at where it said the registered agent. I wanted the registered agent to be more involved in the process as much as possible. Where in one point they said the registered agent may be consulted for ballot title and summary. We had it changed to shall. We were also able to collect petitions on election day, which is a little different from some of the other areas. And one of the important things of this bill, if we get it approved, or when we get it approved, is there to be no special elections. We all know what the special elections have done. They're very expensive, and they generally are chosen for the time of the desired outcome. And the legislature, like I said earlier, cannot modify or change or stop this measure through the legislative process without the registered agent approval. And so therefore, if the legislature wants to add something to it that the registered agent chooses not to, the legislative effort could actually place an alternate constitutional amendment on a ballot, sitting side by side with the initiative. So therefore, it would be vote for A or B. One of the things that we had 2 polls done in Alabama in 2000 and 2010. This poll was done by Pulse, and it was funded by Citizens in Charge. Citizens in Charge has graded Alabama with an F because of our lack of participation for our INR and recall. But this chart is on LetBamavote website. That's letbamavote.org. I encourage you to take a look at this, because if you take a look down on the bottom here, 91% of 18 to 29-year-olds that were polled that day in June were in favor of it. Old geezers as myself at the bottom were still above 60%. So the people want this. And the national average was 62%. No, the national average was 67%. I'm rushing. The state average here was 71% for approval. What that tells you, or tells me, that the states that currently have initiative and referendum want to keep it. The states do not have referendum want it. So the only 2 demographics that you'd see on this chart that would flip, because this chart was done the poll was done in 2010, just before the Alabama flipped from Democrat to Republican. So therefore, the Republican and Democrats, their polling would probably differ, because there's always the minority party always wants to get even with the majority party, and they're in the habit of using this to get there. What you'll see here in Alabama with this, you'll see greater discussion among friends and family. You know, it's the old line, you don't discuss religion and politics. Well, when you have an issue, not a candidate, when you have an issue that could directly affect you the following day of the election, you're more engaged. You'll see more letters to the editor, you'll see more TV advertisements, you'll actually see a greater, an abundance of new not-for-profits. Non-for-profits pop up on both sides of the issue. And that will also lead to individuals who are now engaged in the political process that were not before, will actually maybe get more involved, and they'll sign on with a candidate and or contribute to campaigns. So there's so much that can benefit to the state of Alabama right here, and I only see one reason why our legislators won't give this to us. All we're asking for is a vote if we want initiative referendum in our borders. And like I didn't say earlier, but it was actually mentioned in our 1901 Constitutional Convention. So I stand before you 117 years later with no progression, because our legislators don't want us to have this, because obviously they fear it. They fear it, we must embrace it. So how will INR benefit Alabama? One, chances are we'll see recall. You'll also probably see a reduction in taxes. Educational reform, Common Core has been kicked around in this state for 7 years. I told my Common Core friends who are opposing Common Core, you're going to kick it around for another 7 years unless you get behind this process of opening that door where other issues can be addressed. Election reform, ballot access, most certainly. Governor reform, gaming and lottery, pro and con. Also, too, I must point out at this time, government and the citizens should be like a marriage where there's compromise. You're not going to get everything out of an initiative and process, the process, that you'd like. It's a compromise. Some you'll get, some you will not. But it certainly gives us the benefit of being more involved in our state government than we currently are being able to do so now. And at this time, I usually ask my audience, who in the audience is pleased with all the bills that come out of Montgomery? So far, I've not seen a hand go in the air. So that's the same difference. Don't expect everything coming out of an initiative and referendum to be to your liking. It's that marriage that we need to focus on. Property rights, we already discussed Mississippi, and bond issues. It's interesting for recall. There's 19 states with recall, and 11 of those, 19 states have recall, and 11 of them states have initiative and referendum. I haven't yet taken a look at this to see which states came first or which processes, but initiative referendum was popular during the Progressive era in 1890 to 1910. So I suspect most states had initiative referendum, and the citizens gained their right to vote out their legislators for failure of adhering to the law. I invite you to come to visit LetBamavote.org, and on Facebook by the same name, LetBamavote. The website is full of information, historical information, and Facebook primarily is for more up-to-date information. In closing, I honestly feel that INR is the only means of opening our state government. I honestly believe that. Since 1901, what has given us the right to have INR? Nothing. We don't change, nothing's going to happen. And what INR will do to the state is nothing that's already here. Opponents will say, well, Frank, will it bring in court cases? Well, it will. Just like it did a couple of years ago in the immigration bill. That was tied up in a court case. Other individuals will say that it will bring in outside money. Trust me, outside money is already in our political system. Our legislators should not fear it. If they do, we as citizens must embrace it. And this is it. If any of you would like to have a presentation, there's only 2 dates in the calendar year that I will not speak. I've been married for 48 years. I'm looking to 49. And those 2 dates are my wife's birthday and our anniversary. So you can contact me at admin letbamavote@letbamavote.org or frank@frankdillman.com. I thank you very much for your time. Take care. Bye now.